know the rhyme for Henry VIII's wives: divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. It's a neat little summary of how 6 women's lives ended. But what if one of them didn't just survive? What if she actually won? What if the queen, who was publicly shamed, cast aside after 6 months, and nicknamed the Flanders Mare, wasn't a victim, but the ultimate champion? This is the story of the queen who was basically buried alive, not in a tomb, but under a mountain of insults. She was rejected by King Henry VIII, but then brilliantly negotiated a deal that made her one of the richest women in England. This is the story of Anne of Cleves, the woman who traded a crown for a life of freedom and outlived every single one of Henry's other wives. She wasn't just lucky, she was a master of the game, and she beat Henry at his own. What if the queen who was rejected by Henry VIII wasn't a victim, but the ultimate winner? This is the insane story of how Anne of Cleves, the so-called ugly wife, cleverly negotiated her way out of a deadly marriage to become one of the most powerful and independent women in England, outliving every other wife. She traded a crown for something way more valuable: freedom. To understand Anne's incredible win, you have to get how desperate King Henry VIII was. By 1537, Henry was in big trouble. His third wife, Jane Seymour, had finally given him what he wanted more than anything: a son, the future King Edward VI. But she died just 12 days later. Henry was devastated, but politics wait for no one. One son wasn't enough to secure the Tudor dynasty. He knew that one sick kid or one accident could throw the whole kingdom into chaos. On top of that, England was totally isolated. Henry's break from the Catholic Church had made him enemy number 1 in Europe. The 2 biggest powers, France and the Holy Roman Empire, were talking about teaming up for a holy war against England. Henry needed allies, and he needed them yesterday. His chief minister, Thomas Cromwell, had a plan. He looked to the Protestant states in Germany, who also hated the Pope. It was a purely strategic move. The problem was, Henry needed a wife, an heir, and an ally. The solution, Cromwell said, was in a small German duchy called Cleves, and with it, the Duke's 24-year-old sister, Anne. Anne of Cleves was born in Dusseldorf in 1515. Her world was nothing like the glamorous, backstabbing court she was about to join. Unlike English ladies who were taught to sing, dance, and flirt, Anne's upbringing was way more conservative. She was an expert in needlework and running a household. That's what you did as a German noblewoman. She could read and write, but only in German. Music, dancing, foreign languages. Not on her resume, and that cultural gap was about to become a huge problem. Her brother, Duke Wilhelm, was an ambitious guy. He wanted to beef up his small territory against the powerful Holy Roman Emperor, and an alliance with England was a jackpot. So, Anne and her younger sister, Amalia, became political chess pieces. Cromwell, desperate to make his Protestant alliance happen, pushed Anne as the perfect candidate. She was noble, from a friendly country, and, he assumed, able to have kids. The stage was set for a royal marriage based 100% on politics and a picture. Back in the 16th century, there were no dating apps. A king chose his bride based on rumors, and most importantly, a portrait. So Henry sent his best court painter, Hans Holbein the Younger, to Cleves with one mission: paint Anne and her sister, and make it look exactly like them. Henry had been tricked by flattering portraits before, and wasn't having it again. Holbein came back with a masterpiece. The painting shows a young woman in beautiful clothes, looking calm and dignified. Henry loved it. Based on this one image, he said yes. The marriage treaty was signed. Everything was riding on that painting. It was a promise of a beautiful, successful queen. As Anne made the long journey to England, the court was buzzing with excitement. She landed on the English coast on December 27th, 1539. Henry, impatient and excited, was waiting for the woman from the portrait. He had fallen in love with an idea painted by Holbein, and reality was about to hit him like a ton of bricks. Henry VIII, deep down, thought of himself as a romantic hero. He loved big, chivalrous gestures. So on New Year's Day, 1540, just before they were supposed to officially meet, he decided to surprise her. It was a courtly tradition. A knight shows up in disguise, and his true love instantly recognizes him. It was proof of their connection. So, the 48-year-old king, who was now fat, balding, and had a nasty oozing wound on his leg, threw on a cloak and burst into Anne's room. It was a complete catastrophe. Anne was looking out the window, watching a bull baiting, when this big, strange man came in and just kissed her. She spoke no English. He spoke no German. Confused and probably scared, she just gave a quick, polite thanks for the gift he brought and turned back to the window. She had no idea who he was. To her, he was just some old, overdressed guy being way too forward. For Henry, it was a massive public humiliation. His romantic fantasy was shattered. He stormed out of the room, changed into his kingly clothes, and came back. Only when his men bowed did Anne realize her horrible mistake. But it was too late. The king's pride was crushed. He famously complained to his ministers, "I like her not. I like her not." Even though the first meeting was a train wreck, the wedding had to happen. The alliance with Cleves was too important. Canceling now would be a massive insult. Henry was trapped. He tried everything to get out of it, even digging up an old, cancelled betrothal of Anne's as a legal excuse. But nothing worked. So, on January 6th, 1540, a furious Henry VIII married a confused Anne of Cleves. The marriage was dead on arrival. Henry complained to Cromwell the very next morning, saying, "I liked her before not well, but now I like her much worse." He told everyone he couldn't consummate the marriage, giving crude and insulting reasons why. For 6 months, they lived a total lie. Anne, meanwhile, played the part of a perfect queen. In public, she said Henry was a kind husband. She was smart. She knew what happened to Henry's other wives. She knew that making this king angry could be a fatal mistake. But then, the political situation changed. The alliance between France and the Holy Roman Empire fell apart, making the German marriage less important. And Henry's eye had already started wandering to one of Anne's ladies-in-waiting, the young and fun Catherine Howard. Henry now had a new prize in mind, and he was ready to end his marriage. This is where the story of Anne of Cleves flips from a tragedy into a masterclass. When Henry decided to end the marriage, Anne was in incredible danger. She knew all about Catherine of Aragon, divorced and exiled. She definitely knew about Anne Boleyn, beheaded. She was a foreigner, alone, with no one to protect her. Fighting Henry was a battle she was guaranteed to lose. So she did something brilliant. She didn't fight. When the king's men asked for her consent to the annulment, she just agreed. Calmly and without a single protest. The official reasons were pathetic. The marriage wasn't consummated, and Henry never inwardly consented. But instead of fighting it, she cooperated. She wrote a letter to the king, agreeing with his decision completely. This wasn't weakness. It was a 4D chess move of self-preservation. She knew that Henry's ego was the most dangerous thing at court. By flattering it and making herself seem totally harmless, she disarmed him. She didn't challenge his power, she validated it. And by doing that, she saved her life and set herself up for an unbelievable win. Henry was so relieved and grateful that he gave her one of the most insane divorce settlements in history. He didn't just dump her, he promoted her. Anne of Cleves, the rejected queen, was given the official title, the king's beloved sister. This made her the most important woman in England, after the new queen and Henry's daughters. Her financial deal was even more stunning. She was given a ton of property, including the amazing Richmond Palace, and, in a crazy twist of irony, Hever Castle, Anne Boleyn's childhood home. She got a massive yearly income that made her independently wealthy. She got to keep all her jewels and clothes. The one condition? She had to stay in England. To some, that might sound like a prison. But for Anne, it was the ultimate prize. Going back home meant her brother would just marry her off again. By staying in England, she got wealth, status, and most importantly, freedom. She had played her hand perfectly. She faced the most dangerous man in England and walked away not just alive, but rich. Checkmate. For the next 17 years, Anne of Cleves lived an amazing life. As the king's beloved sister, she was an honored guest at court. She learned English, she learned to dance, she got into fashion. She was smart enough to stay friendly with Henry himself. She even became close with his kids, Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth, exchanging gifts and becoming a stable, kind figure in their chaotic lives. After Henry's fifth wife, Catherine Howard, was executed, people even whispered that the king might remarry Anne. She outlived Henry, who died in 1547. She rode in the coronation parade for Queen Mary I, right next to Princess Elizabeth, a respected member of the royal family. She managed her own huge properties, ran her own households, and never remarried, keeping the independence she had won. She had something none of Henry's other wives ever really got: a life of peace and security, free from a tyrant's mood swings. She adapted, she survived, and she thrived. Let's go back to that rhyme. Catherine of Aragon, divorced, died in exile. Anne Boleyn, beheaded. Jane Seymour, died. Catherine Howard, beheaded. Catherine Parr, the survivor, outlived Henry, but died a year later. And then there's Anne of Cleves, divorced, or annulled. She didn't just survive. She prospered. People call her the lucky wife. But luck had almost nothing to do with it. This was all about emotional intelligence and knowing exactly who she was dealing with. She saw she was in a fight she couldn't win, so instead of fighting, she negotiated. She chose a life of incredible wealth and freedom over a dangerous crown. Was she buried alive under insults? Maybe for a little while in the history books. But in reality, she landed on her feet in England and grew into a powerful, independent woman. She wasn't a victim of Henry's cruelty. She was proof that resilience is a superpower. She took the humiliation and turned it into a lifetime of freedom. Anne of Cleves' legacy isn't about being the rejected wife. It's about being the great survivor, the woman who quietly outplayed the king. The story of Anne of Cleves isn't about rejection. It's about reinvention. She came to England as a political pawn and was immediately written off as a disappointment. But with her own intelligence, she completely changed her destiny. She traded the constant danger of the crown for the security of the English countryside. She outlasted the king, all his other wives, and his son, dying peacefully at 41. She was buried with full honors in Westminster Abbey, the ultimate sign of the respect she had earned. Anne of Cleves proved that in the brutal Game of Thrones, you don't always have to sit on the throne to win. Sometimes, the biggest victory is just being the last one standing. If you think the story of this Tudor survivor is insane, and you want more hidden stories from history, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's next. And let us know in the comments, do you think Anne of Cleves was just lucky, Or was she the smartest of all of Henry's queens?